Yo, what's going on, people? Episode number one of Droppin' Knowledge. Coming in today, I got a special guest, and we want to talk about bankruptcy. I think when I talk to a lot of folks about credit, one of the things that comes up a lot is bankruptcy, and it just seems to be an option that probably far too many people look at without necessarily needing bankruptcy. Many times you're in debt, you don't necessarily have the answers, and then you look for you kind of look for what you want to hear and what doesn't sound good about, hey, let me file for bankruptcy and then I owe someone or anyone nothing. Right. And so many people choose that as an outlet. And in some cases, it's definitely warranted and valid and you need to because you're just so far underwater and there's really no coming back. But in many cases, I think folks do it and they think about the positives, but I don't know if they really truly think about the cons. And so what we want to do today on this first episode is I have a business partner of mine, a very special guest who actually filed bankruptcy a few years ago, and she'll definitely tell you more about her story. But I thought it would just be something good that a lot of folks could take things from, and you may learn something here or there. Maybe you're pondering bankruptcy yourself, and she can kind of tell you about her experience. And then what's even cooler is the fact that she's been able to get that bankruptcy removed within, I think they tell you 7 to 10 years, much sooner than that. So I'm going to bring my guest in. Let's see if I can get her in here. Shronda, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me and see me okay?
I can hear and see you just well. How are you doing today?
I am great. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the episode. Feel very special to be the first guest.
That's right, episode one. And so I've told them a little bit about your story and, why I thought you were such an important guest for episode one. You, like myself, we're in the business of financial literacy and credit restoration. And I know you talk to folks just like I do and bankruptcy. Although I've never done it before, it was absolutely something I pondered, some years ago when I had a couple of properties burn up on me. I didn't have insurance. And again, I didn't have any answers. And so bankruptcy is a word that I knew. Saw that our president did it, way back when. And so I said, hey, if, it must be something that can provide some relief. But I know you've actually lived it, walked through it. And so I guess before we jump into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, just give us a little bit of background on who you are and where you're from.
I am Shronda McDaniel. Financial literacy is my name and game as well. Working to change people's lives and rebuild their stories, because the reality is that a lot of us don't have the information, and like myself, uneducated, filing bankruptcy. Located in Chicago. I've been up to this thing for about 17 months and dedicating myself to not just helping the people around me, but everyone I come across, and specializing in speaking and empowering women. It's my story.
It's dope. That's dope. So, hey, if you're on this live right now, feel free to share because, again, we live and we talk about bankruptcy and we talk to so many people that are looking at that as an option. My guess is that if you've either filed bankruptcy before, you're thinking about filing bankruptcy, you're probably going to take some information in, right? Some insights, some nuggets that you might not have known. And again, this is not coming from an attorney who obviously wants your business. This is coming from someone who's actually done it and has kind of worked through it. And so let's kind of go back. I think, Shronda, many of us, we look at bankruptcy as an option, and we may get into that predicament just because, from a financial literacy standpoint, we're just not there, right? Mm. Kind of what was your experience kind of growing up? I know you're from Chicago's West Side. How much exposure did, you see, I snuck that in. How much exposure do you think that you got from, I don't know, parents, cousins, family members, friends on just financial literacy? Like, what was that like for you?
I'm from Chicago, and none. There was no conversations about that. It's really something that it doesn't really happen. It's not something that you talk about. In fact, talking about finances, talking about how much money you made, talking about credit is taboo. Like, we keep that a secret, and it's almost as if you're in someone's dirty laundry if you have a conversation about it. So I didn't grow up having conversations about finances, right? It almost felt disrespectful to have those conversations about finances. And so knowing credit or any of that stuff, I'm going to tell you my experience with learning credit. 18, went away to school, college year, freshman year of college. The tables outside of student hall, you get free t-shirts
Mm-hmm.
and let them run your credit like crazy. That is
Mm-hmm.
my first real experience with truly dealing and looking at credit.
Got it. Got it. I really appreciate this because, to your point, so many of us keep this. We keep this close to the chest, and it's what absolutely kills us a lot too, right? Like again, it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily want to share with everyone, because if you're sharing with someone who doesn't necessarily have the financial literacy themselves, more than likely you're just putting your business out there, and that's what people are afraid of. But I always say, vet people, and if you find that they have an aptitude for financial literacy, et cetera, and you know that you don't have the answers, one, obviously you can always go out there and do your own research, your own homework. Google is just, a couple of keystrokes away. But then also those folks that you have in your network, you absolutely should leverage those people. And so let's kind of fast forward. So you talked about the fact that you went to college. So I'm assuming you say you didn't get anything growing up, so nothing through grade school about financial literacy,
No,
nothing in high school
no.
about financial literacy. College, I'm assuming?
It's been some years. I remember there was a class, and it still had nothing to do with financial literacy. It was like the one-on-one series. When you first start going to school, they make you take like these basic courses. And there was this one course that I remember them talking about, the everyday life stuff. But even still, I really can't say that we talked about finances. Like, I remember them even breaking down how you could analyze what social security numbers mean and how they were assigned. Like, you can tell an age or something like that, and it has been years. They taught us those things. I've even remember a class that kind of breaks down how mentally we think that if it's traffic, don't take the expressway, take the streets. But really, the expressway is still faster because there's no lights. But I don't remember having any classes, college included, on my finances, right? And I have an advertising background and degree, so they really weren't like, okay, let's talk about your credit. So
Right. So, what took you down the road of feeling like bankruptcy might be the answer? Was it bad shopping habits? Was it was it the real estate housing market that caught you up? Like what got you to the point where that was even something that you started to look at and ponder as an option?
so life happens, some crazy circumstances. My back was against the wall. A lot of it was poor decision, poor money management, poor credit management. I had a bunch of credit cards that were, not all of them were maxed out, but they had high balances, high limits. I really wasn't making the income to pay the debt. And at the time, I mean, now we don't talk about it, but we know that people around us do file bankruptcy. At the time, it seemed like the best thing to do. And I do get that for some people, sometimes, big exclamation on sometimes, it may be a resource for the person, right? My back was against the wall. I really didn't have a whole lot of options. And so for me, that is why I filed for bankruptcy, because it did help me to basically get rid of all of this debt that I would otherwise not know how to, begin to get rid of.
Did the debt come about? Because there's, I like to look at myself, right? For me, I like my things, right? But the cars and the houses and those things, but I don't go crazy on from a shopping perspective. But I'm such a high, I don't want to call it a high risk, but I love business, right? And I love being an entrepreneur, and so I'm always going after something. And that's where I invest a lot of my money. And that's where I'm putting a lot of my capital at risk. For you, was it more of personal spending, or was it around, business, getting things off the ground, certain projects, being an entrepreneur?
A little bit of both. Um, I was at the time, well, some years prior to the bankruptcy, working on establishing a business. And so one of those credit cards was actually a credit card that I was using for the business. And then others were personal, not necessarily things related to um, over shopping, etc., but just personal things,
I know you're a
being
little
in a
bit
bad
grumpy.
relationship. I'm sorry.
I said, I know you're a little bit. You said not over shopping. I said, I know you're.
No, it wasn't. But in that case, it wasn't. It
Got
was,
it.
you know, I was in a bad relationship at the time. Being in relation to that, kind of trying to carry two people. Um, I had a job that was paying more. I was working at a college, and I was looking to make a career change. I needed to leave the college to go to a high school. When I moved to the high school, I took a huge pay cut. And so the bills and what needed to be spent out, the two things just didn't really go together. And so, the debt and the payments definitely exceeded what I needed to pay out for rent, et cetera, to survive. So
Dig. So what year was it? So we're in 2020 now. When did you file for bankruptcy?
November of 2014.
Got it. So your back's against the wall. You're looking for an option. What would you gauge, even understanding bankruptcy at the time? Let's say as you were going into, is this a decision for me? On a scale of 1 to 10, meaning 1 you knew very little about it, 10 you knew a ton about it. Where would you put yourself in November of 2014 in terms of your knowledge around, no pun intended, around bankruptcy?
Definitely pun intended. I would probably give it about a 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going into that, what did that look like? Did you talk to some people around you? Did you kind of talk to girlfriends, talk to a boyfriend at the time? What was your process leading up to, I guess, going to see that attorney at the time? Or was there a process?
I made the decision that that is what I needed to do. My mind said that it would help me to prepare for, a second chance for the future. Right. And so there were really not a lot of conversations to be had. I just started doing my research, finding bankruptcy attorneys, people that will talk to you, um, that came at a lower cost than maybe others. And then basically me looking for the person that was a good fit for me. So there weren't a ton of conversations. It was, I made the decision, and then I just started research on finding someone to help me do it.
Got it. So did you mentioned talking to different attorneys? Do you recall how many attorneys you actually spoke to before you made your decision as to who you move forward with?
I talked to three.
Okay. Got it. And for viewers that are here that and again, this is a little dated because you did this 5-6 years ago, but do you recall kind of the all-in cost that it was to file for bankruptcy?
I do not. I would be making it up if I said I remember how much it cost, but it cost a couple $1,000s to do. Right? It's definitely not a cheap process.
Got you. And so just talk about bank now that you've gone through it. I know you've educated yourself around it. What does that process look like? Do you go in one day, you take whatever you need to take with you, answer some questions, and you're gone? Like, does it take a month to go through the process? Like, what is that process from what you recall? What does it look like?
I mean, it could be a really speedy process, and if you don't know a whole lot about it, and you don't have an attorney that is, willing to open and honestly sit down and talk to you about the items, you can sit down in somebody's office in the same day and you leave it up to them. You're signing paperwork, right? Almost like you're signing your life away, sort of thing. Some of them are going to talk about expectations a little bit more than others, where some of them you kind of walk away like, I don't even know what this means or what is supposed to happen next. I think that even the guy that I went with, he was very informative, but I didn't even really understand the process of once it got discharged, or how fast that happened, or what it meant, right? You come in, and the reality is that they make a lot of money from doing it. They'll go through, they'll tell you, basically they pull your credit. We can take all this stuff, we can wrap this up for you, and they will talk to you about, 13 or 7, but you probably should go in knowing the difference between the two, because if you don't, they may push you into an option that would probably make your situation worse. But you can sit down and talk to someone, and the process can happen within that same day. You're signing off paperwork, and then they put in whatever motions, etc., they need to do to go in front of the court. So I remember, for me, the entire process probably took about 2 months, and it was only because I wasn't, I didn't go with the very first person that I had a conversation with, right? Some of it I didn't. I wanted to do it. I had like a ton of parking tickets in my name that weren't mine. I had a car in my name that had a lot of parking tickets. The parking tickets weren't mine, like a few $1,000s, and you can't roll parking tickets into your bankruptcy, right? And you can't roll student loans into your bankruptcy. And the reality is that those are really the two biggest problems. I probably could have figured something out with the rest of the debt, but I went through the process thinking, at least I'm getting rid of these credit cards. I think that some of the differences now from today versus, the day that I went to go file bankruptcy, or even talking to some of the individuals that we work with. I was just starting to talk about maybe my differences between today and my knowledge then. Is really understanding that when you go in uneducated, I don't want to use the word being taken advantage of, but when you go in uneducated about something, it allows them to really push an agenda on you, or push bankruptcy on you, and it may not be the best solution for you.
From start to finish, how long did it take for you, kind of estimated? I know it's been a while.
From start to finish,
from like the time that you went in there, and I guess the time that it's actually discharged. And explain a little bit about what discharge actually means. I know I hear that term. What does discharge actually mean in the realm of bankruptcy?
So there's basically a process after you go into the court. They basically allow you that, okay, you can't afford this debt. They say that you no longer have to pay it. It means something different for chapter 7, chapter 13, but I did a chapter 7. And so basically what it means is there's this time period that it takes for them to, I guess, get all the creditors on one accord, that your case is still open, which is, it was a few months, right? That process happened really quickly. A few months later, by then the bankruptcy attorney is paid off, because you still have to pay them regardless of this bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. They're paid off. The court documents can be closed. All of the creditors who you owe, they've been submitted paperwork. They've basically been informed that you have been deemed, you filed bankruptcy, you can't pay this debt, they cannot continue to contact you, etc. And so it took a few months to do, and then you get a letter in the mail that lets you know that your bankruptcy has been discharge. So basically, discharge means it's completed, right? All of your debt is rolled in. Nobody's contacting you. You're not paying any money to anyone. That's it, right? Sounds like you're in the clear, but no, that is probably really where the problems begin, right? So they tell you to, even though it's supposed to come off in 7 to 10 years, they tell you after that process to allow about 2 years, and your credit will start to rebuild itself, where you can get credit, but you need to wait about 2 years from the day that you actually get dismissed.
So once it's discharged, what are those challenges? What are those challenges that you experience? Because now it feels like, hey, I'm not getting these calls anymore. I'm kind of free and I'm in the clear. Great. Okay. A couple years and I can start to rebuild my credit. But until that time, what does life look like after bankruptcy?
I mean, it's challenging. You can't plan a move. You're not moving into a new apartment. You're not buying a home. You're not getting a car. You're not getting any credit. And so people think that credit is just a bad thing when it's not, right? But if you're in a situation where you're really not bringing in that much income, or you're in a situation where you're living somewhere you don't want to live, for these, this fresh, brand new bankruptcy, you're stuck. You're living wherever it is you're living, and you're not going anywhere because they're going to run a credit check on you, and they're going to see a bankruptcy. And nobody wants to rent to, loan to, any of that, anyone who just filed bankruptcy, because it says you can't pay your bills. Like, it doesn't matter that I filed for bankruptcy. I didn't owe any landlord any money. My rent was paid, but any renters see that and they're like, no go. It's too brand new. You instantly show people that you cannot pay your bills and you're not trustworthy, and it's not something that they approve you of. Fast forward. So it's 5 years in. Fast forward 4 years. I was looking for a place before my bankruptcy was removed. Apply for this place, making great income. We're talking about a almost 5-year-old bankruptcy. And the person was like, no, you filed bankruptcy. What? 4 years ago? So
Right.
I know that when we go through dire situations, or you're going through things, it feels like a reprieve. However, it kind of creates a even bigger problem for you, because if you're not making enough money to do the things that you do, you can't even get additional assistance, because you now have this huge mark on your credit. So you kind of got to figure it out with the money you have, and that's it. Right? There's no new businesses. There's none of that, because you just filed for bankruptcy.
Right. So let's move to brighter days. Right. Brighter days was that. So I know you're going to tell us more about your story of actually having these bankruptcies removed well before the 7 to 10 year window or length of time that you were told by your attorney, and that's kind of just common knowledge of what folks believe, is that you can't remove a bankruptcy, at the soonest 7 years. Yeah, so I was saying that I know that you were fortunate enough to find a company that was able to assist you with actually getting this bankruptcy removed, and so kind of talk about how you found this company and just what that process looked like.
Well, I was introduced to the company by you. Thanks, Knowledge. You're awesome. I had a couple things happening. Way brighter days. Fast forward a bit. The bankruptcy was still on my credit. I had been at the point where I started to get approved for things. Right, the 2 years have passed, but I had really high interest rate everything. The stories. You get those credit cards, the credit building credit cards that have the huge annual fees, that have the huge interest rates on them. They give you a $300 credit limit, and really the amount of money that you're paying out for that is insane. I had a lot of great things going on for myself, work wise, etc. And I'm like, you can't really level up if your credit isn't right. Like, I'm throwing money out of the window. And so I had made a decision that I can't keep doing this. I have to fix my credit, because despite paying those cards, all of that, my credit score wasn't budging. And I made the decision that this is something I'm going to do. And I'm like, there is so many people out here who fix credit, but I really didn't know where to start, because I also hear a ton of stories, nightmare stories about credit repair. And so I didn't have this conversation with anybody. I, put that out there, prayed about it, said that I was going to take action. Fast forward like 2 weeks, I got a text message that was like, "Is your credit score over 700?" And because I grew up with this being a taboo conversation, there was a part of me, like, I looked at the text message and was like, what? Like, why would you ask me that? And I checked myself and said, this is God moving, because you just said you're going to fix your credit. And so I answered the question honestly, which was just no. And I was invited out to come see some information that could possibly help me. And I was introduced to the company, right? And we know the story from there. So I went out, I saw some information about the company that we both represent. And for me, it was an absolute no-brainer, because like I said, I had made the decision that I was going to fix my credit. No ifs, ands, buts, maybes, possibilities about it. It was something that I was going to take advantage of. And it made sense, right? It made sense. We're talking about a company that is not just a person, right? Because every nightmare story that I heard, it was about a person doing credit or taking someone's identity, etc. So I wanted to go with a company that had a background, a company that I can rely on. The differences in me working with a company versus working with an individual. I mean, it's a company, that I can pick up the phone and call 7 days a week, and I don't have to worry about someone's phone numbers being changed or someone having my social security number. It's a company and not an individual, which says a lot. And so I saw it no brainer, and I got started with the program.
Got it. So let's dive into that. So you started with the program. So I'm assuming the bankruptcy was on all three credit reports.
Yes.
Right. And so from the time that you started with this program, how long did it take for them to actually remove the bankruptcy? And have they been removed from all three bureaus?
The bankruptcy has been removed from two, not three. One of them is hanging on, fighting to the end. But I'm definitely seeing some huge advantages. Crazy story is how they show up across all three. So it's gone off of two of the three bureaus. On two of the three bureaus, though, the bankruptcy, people think that it's a solution. Like, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to file bankruptcy, and that's it. As if my mind said that I'm going to file this bankruptcy, and all of that stuff that they rolled into that bankruptcy would not be on my credit anymore. So I had 9 accounts total. You count the bankruptcy, I got 10 line items on my credit report, right, associated with this bankruptcy. Two of the bankruptcies, two of the bureaus, you can see the bankruptcy in every single thing that I filed for bankruptcy. Basically, that was included on it. In one of the bureaus, you only see the bankruptcy, right? As you know, they can do what they want to do. And on one of them, you only see the bankruptcy. You don't see any of the line items. And the other two, you see 10 things, right? And so you have these 10 negative remarks on your credit profile.
So quick question. So on your credit report, you actually see the word bankruptcy.
Yes.
And then the accounts, like it would be on any other credit report?
Yes. So you see bankruptcy as a public record. And then, for instance, one of them was a Discover card. And so it's still the Discover line item. They can still see how much money I owe Discover, but it says zero balance, and it says they show up a little different on each report, but basically it indicates like this was included in the bankruptcy or account closed a part of bankruptcy, right? And so then you can see it's the Discover, the Capital One, the basically anybody that I owe money to who I didn't pay, because it's $0 now because of the bankruptcy.
Got it. Do you recall where your credit score was when the bankruptcy finally got discharged? Do you even know? Did you even look, or were you kind of like, yo, I know it ain't good, and so I'm chilling?
No, and I can laugh about it now, right? But it was one of those, like, I know it was just flatline. I know it was dead. I wasn't going to try to go do anything with it. And so there was no need to look, right? Like, so what am I looking at it for? There's
Right.
nothing there. So I didn't bother. I didn't bother to look at it. Even when I tell you, I you do a fast forward, 4 years later, 3 years later, we're still talking. I was in the very low 500s. So who knows where it was at that point. So
So, and when you when you did the bankruptcy, did you roll in everything, like everything that was on your credit report, or did you still have other things, everything?
Everything that I could roll in, right? I couldn't roll in a parking ticket, so we didn't. And I couldn't roll in a student loans. But everything else that was on there, I included in the bankruptcy.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you started this program back in October of 2018. How long did it take? You mentioned that bankruptcy was off of two of the bureaus. How long did it take for that first one to be removed?
7 weeks. 7 weeks, it came off of one of my reports. When it
Wow.
came off the report, it came off, and it came off with two of the line items, right? So it basically removed the bankruptcy, those two things. So it wiped off three things from the credit in
The
7 weeks.
bankruptcy and two accounts.
Came
Wow.
off at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Which bureau was that?
TransUnion.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
Mhm.
amazing. And, one of the things that when people become a little bit more financial literate, and you know what those scores are and what each one is looking like, in terms of what each credit bureau looks like in terms of what your report is and your score is there, you can actually start to go purchase more effectively, right? And so I think I've told folks before, because TransUnion, I knew that TransUnion was my highest score. When I went to purchase my Tesla a year ago, I went in, and the directive that I gave the actual car salesperson is that I only want to deal with lenders that use TransUnion, right? Because I knew that that was my highest score. That would put me in my best position. And so that's amazing that 7 weeks after starting, you get this bankruptcy removed. Of course, not probably where you want to be at yet, but if there was something that you needed to do, you could buy a little bit more smartly, because you knew, hey, you know what, it's not showing up on this TransUnion. So what about the second bureau? How long did that take?
That one took a couple months.
Okay.
I believe I hit 4.5 month mark when that one came off.
Wow.
Well, most importantly with that one, it came off, but it almost wiped off nearly every account. It left a couple things behind. So of the 10 line items, it may have left 3 things behind on that one, and that was my Equifax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's dope. That's dope. So 7 weeks and 4.5 months versus 7 years.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
that's crazy. And so how are you doing today in terms from a credit perspective? You started this program in October of 2018. We're about a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half since then. Give us an update. What's going on in the world of Shronda and her credit journey today?
Completely obsessed with credit at this point, right? One of the things, I don't know, first thing people may roll over and do is check their Facebook. I'm checking my credit first. Um, checking my credit. I am in the 700s. And it's a process, right? It's a process. I don't want to give someone like, oh my God, it was like magic, but it was patience and it was a process. But the reality is that I had from 7 to 10 years to wait, or these couple of months. Over this time period, the company has started so the bankruptcy is gone. Now at this point, TransUnion has none of those accounts on it anymore, right?
Wow.
Experian has just a couple on it, but Equifax has just a couple on it, and Experian is the one that just has a bankruptcy, still working to get that one off. But I'm in the 700 club on both my TransUnion as well as my Equifax score. I'm basically in the rebuilding stage, well, aggressively building towards
Yeah.
750 and beyond, right?
Yeah.
Because people think, or you talk to them and they think they just slap a trade line on it, but with that bankruptcy and all of that stuff, it made no sense. And so now I'm in the stage where I'm adding positive trade lines to my account, and my insurance premium went down, right? If one of my goals was to save money, my insurance premium went down by quite a few dollars, $179 over the year. People
Wow.
don't look at those numbers though, because
Right.
they decrease your policy and you don't look at it because it's a couple extra dollars per month, but you multiply that over a whole year. That's my money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my insurance premium went down. I received a few different offers to refinance my car, make the interest rate go down, essentially because of where I am on the timeline. My payment really won't decrease, but overall, I will not pay a ton of money on interest. I haven't taken that bite yet because I'm trying to get my score up just a little bit more before I do that. Um, Score is looking real nice, so I think I want another car, but that's a whole nother thing. But I am basically in that position where before you couldn't say, do I want to refinance or do I want to just get another car? That wasn't an option before, because I'm smart enough to know not to go out and just go buy a car with just any credit score, right?
Right.
Not going to make the same mistakes again. And so now that I'm in the 700s, I'm definitely, it feels different, right? It's a
Yeah.
way freer lifestyle to have these options or have these choices of, I can go get a new car if that's what I decide to do, or let me just refinance and wait this thing out. So definitely saving more money, not paying out as much money in interest rates and all of that stuff at this point.
Congrats. That's an amazing story.
Thanks.
That's really not a long, that's not a long period of time that you've made such headway. And you talked about just feeling different. It's really no fronting. It's really helped my confidence. Like the fact
Yes.
that like I walk around a little different, right? And it was, but
It feels
credit,
different.
bad credit also gives you like trauma. Like like it, like real talk. When I knew what my score was. I remember when I bought my Tesla, when I bought my car, I had my score using a tool that I use to see my score, but I still didn't know if I should believe it when I went into the dealership, right? Like
Right.
maybe I got a dummy credit score here, and that's crazy, right? That's because that's my situation. Even when I bought my place 3 months ago, like I knew what my credit score was, right? I knew I'd looked 794, and then I told the lender, okay, you can pull it, but I still had a little anxiety, like, is it really real? And that's because it's years of you know, sometimes bad credit, sometimes just not even knowing where your credit is, right? So many people, I think, I can't remember the percentage, right? But half of Americans, I think, don't even know what their credit score is.
Mhm.
And so that means you're just out here flying blind, but applying for jobs, getting insurance, buying cars, and you don't even really know where you're at. And you're just waiting on the lender to come back and tell you what's happening, right? And something I did a live yesterday talking about credit. And one of the things that is very tricky about credit, you talked about high interest rates, is less than perfect credit still allows you to make moves, right? And that's the tricky part, right? Because you can go buy a home and be dangling your keys, right? And you're at a 600, but you qualify, right? So
Mhm.
I was talking about, I had a buddy, man, and it was just it made my ears hurt. He was somebody just bought a vehicle. If you're listening to this, bro, I ain't fronting on you. I'm just using the story, but um, he bought a couple vehicles, right? One for him and one for his wife. And he said, he paid 19%, right? And he was talking to me about fixing his credit. And he didn't make that move, but he made the move to go buy two cars at 19%. And
Mhm.
so, we talk about this all the time, but it's just mindset. Like, what do you share with people that may come across you or chat with you and they're thinking about bankruptcy? And I know that you're not, an expert, et cetera. You're
Mhm.
someone who lived your life, went through some things, and building back. But what kind of things do you share with them, or what are you looking for? What advice or guidance do you offer?
That's a great question. I want to touch this and I'll answer that question. It's interesting you brought up the applying for jobs. We're applying for jobs, and the job I have, or working, I remember being scared as hell, right? Because I'm like, my credit score, because they'll like just skip you past it. Nobody ever says, yeah, we didn't hire you because your credit score sucks. I come across people often who, I'm not gonna say is little to no debt, right? I don't. Again, I'm not a bankruptcy attorney, but there are people who have little to no debt, or the debt that they have, some of it is already in collections, or it is very important that when deciding to do a bankruptcy, you sit down and you really look at what is in front of you, right? Understanding your options, because I told you that I went into it and I didn't explore a bunch of other options. Like, that was it. And luckily, I didn't have everything that I had was current, right? It wasn't in collections, past medical bills, any of that stuff. But if you really don't understand credit and what you're looking at, when you talk to a bankruptcy attorney, even if they give you information, the information that they're giving you is pro bankruptcy, right? Like, they're not going to say, no, you got 3 accounts, 2 of them are in collections. This doesn't make sense. And here's why.
Right.
And so I normally have a conversation with them. Again, not a bankruptcy attorney. Have a conversation with them. What are some of your goals and what exactly are you trying to do? If no one should be rolling accounts that are in collections into a bankruptcy. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. Something that they should absolutely evaluate and look at differently. And so when I'm talking to individuals, I'm talking to them about understanding their goals, right? If someone is saying to me, I'm going to just file bankruptcy because I want to go buy a house in 2 years. Well, I'm going to encourage you to sit down and make another plan, because plan A is not going to allow you to go out and buy a home in 2 years. Once you file bankruptcy, you are literally flatlined, knocked on your back, as they say, and all you do is look up at Jesus, because they have wiped your feet from underneath you right behind filing bankruptcy. And so where we think it's a solution, it starts, well, it may have closed this door, but it's opened up another door of a few years of not being able to do the things that you want to do. There's eventual home ownership, but definitely not in a couple months after you file for bankruptcy. You got to fast forward that to a few years down the line, right? You better be living in an apartment that you want to stay in, because it's, you're stuck. And so I just have conversations with them about their goals, exactly what is present, and understanding what all of their options are, right? Because we make decisions because we're uninformed of all of our options and what's available.
Wow, it's amazing. This is I truly appreciate you sharing your story with our viewers here. I've heard it before, and it was such an important story and powerful story that I wanted to make sure that other people that one, if you filed a bankruptcy, right, it is what it is. But I wanted them to be aware that you don't have to wait those 7 years, right, to potentially start to attack and get the opportunity to remove your bankruptcy and get back to life sooner than later. And so I think that's dope. I know that it's I commend you, because again, we talk about this as we were friends prior to you actually starting your journey and your process of removing this bankruptcy, something we had never talked about before. I had no idea. And so again, we just don't talk about it. Again, it's not like you need to go live on social media and talk about your situation, but seek out those folks that provide value, right? Those folks that you trust, and but do make sure that they know a little something about it as well, because we listen to a lot of people that just pass on information that they've never vetted. They don't know to be true. It's just what they've heard. So seek out some folks in your network. We all have them. Oftentimes, you just have to open your mouth. Open your mouth. You might not say, I got a bankruptcy, but hey, I got a buddy. Do you know anybody? Right. So even if you don't want to out yourself, you can start to broach those conversations and get into start to pick and pack away from your network and see what they know and who's in that network that can potentially lead you in the right direction. So what's so you're going through that process. Any kind of final thoughts that you have for anybody listening in, and just final thoughts, I guess, that you can share with folks.
Absolutely. I do have final thoughts. Don't be the person that thinks that you have a bankruptcy and you have to accept what is in front of you. I don't know if you've seen the episode that he made mention of where he talked about credit on yesterday, but just accepting and not taking action means that your money, you are throwing away your hard-earned money every single day. Doesn't matter how new or old the bankruptcy is, you made a decision to file bankruptcy, and at the time maybe it was the best solution for you, but in order for you to truly take advantage of everything that's out there and available to you, there's people who have the world at their hand because they have good credit, right? Let's stop underestimating credit. Credit is not just about being in debt with credit cards. Credit opens up all sort of doors. And so yes, you file for bankruptcy. Okay, it happens, right? It happens. Our president did it a few times. It happens. People absolutely do it, but take advantage, and take charge of your situation, because we don't have to. You asked me before, did I know my credit score right after it happened? Like, no, I didn't know because I didn't want to look at it. We don't have to not look at it to be ashamed of it, but look at it so that you can take action to do something about it. If you're thinking about bankruptcy, just make sure that you're exploring all of your options, reaching out and having a conversation, not just with the bankruptcy attorney, because they're going to talk to you for it versus against it, understanding what all of your options are. And I'm telling you, it feels way different when you have a different credit score, right? You have to kind of let the air out of your head yourself every day because it gets a little big, right? And I'm being honest, it feels way different, but we all have that ability to feel the same way because we have a great credit score. So those are my nuggets.
Dig it. I appreciate it. Always so well spoken, so eloquent, and full of jewels and gems. So I appreciate it. For anyone checking us out, we're actually going to be chatting in roughly about 40 minutes. So take a look if you're looking at this through Shronda's page. I know that she had it dropped on her page, how you can actually hear us talk a little bit more about this and the program that we refer to that she's used, that I've used, that has me, just a shade away from an 800 score, has her well in the 700 club. And we're talking about this stuff has happened pretty quickly for us in the grand scheme of things. And so I'm going to post it on my page as well, but I welcome you to join us, check it out, get the information, get the knowledge. And with that being said, this is a wrap. Thank you, Shronda, again for appearing on episode 1 of Droppin' Knowledge.
I want to thank you for having me. Great interview questions. Definitely a pleasure. I hope that you can continue to spread love and great success across your timeline, because these things are extremely valuable. So thank you for allowing me to be your first guest on the show.
You got it. No doubt. All right. I'll talk to you soon.